Another technique for applying the watercolor paint is to actually apply a wash, a pretty heavy, what I call juicy wash, and then use various items to actually lift the paint back up and create some lighter areas. So on this page, what I'm going to do is paint some big sections of it with the wash, trying to get a lot of paint. Let me go ahead and use some purple. I want to have a nice juicy color, maybe not that juicy, put a little bit more water in there. And then what I'm going to do is to lay down a couple items directly into this paint before it dries. The first item I'm going to lay down in there is plastic wrap. So what I'm going to do is actually let the plastic wrap wrinkle up and fold, and I'm just going to lay it right in on top. I actually want that plastic to get stuck to the paint, and I'm just going to leave that laid down, and then I'm going to use the same color, and again try to get a nice juicy color on here, and then I'm going to lay in bubble wrap. So you can stamp with the bubble wrap, but then you can also lift with it. A little bit more paint. And so I'm going to just stick this in this section. And then I'm going to leave both of them here to dry. And what's going to happen, you might actually be able to see it, that the paint gathers where the plastic is actually touching it. So it actually kind of lifts away from where it's not touching and actually gets collected underneath where the plastic actually is touching the page. So I'm going to leave those there. There's some interesting bleeding that's going to happen here because this bubble wrap had a little bit of a turquoise color on it. And I've got some other items back here. I've got a paper towel that's crumpled up. I've got my natural sea sponge. I've got a cotton ball, and I've got a cotton swab. And I'm going to use all of these to lift the paint off once I paint it down. So again, a lot of water, some really juicy paint, and then I'm going to paint this down and then use the various items to lift the paint. So I'm going to crumple the paper towel, and those wrinkles are going to kind of create some very interesting textures and shapes. And then maybe do a little bit here. So the paper towel gives me some wrinkles, gives me some really harsh edges. If I use the cotton ball, I can kind of lighten the paint in various areas. And it's a lot softer, but I'm lifting off a lot of that paint. Let me go ahead and put down some more paint before this dries too much. Alright, and then I can do the same thing with the cotton swab. I can use this and I can actually draw in it. I can roll it. Basically I'm lifting and soaking up the paint, creating some interesting textures. And then I can do the same thing with the sponge. And even though the sponge is slightly damp, it will actually draw up and suck up some of the paint. Okay, so I've lifted off a lot of the paint here, created some interesting textures and things. The paint underneath the plastic wrap, I'm going to really need to let it dry. So I'll be back in several minutes to actually pull that off and reveal the texture and the patterns that the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap create. Okay, it's been some time now, and I can go ahead and remove the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap to reveal the texture and the patterns underneath. So the paint's a little bit sticky, and that's okay. I'll just carefully pull this off. Might need to dry a little bit longer, just because the paint was kind of puddled underneath the plastic. But you can see how the wrinkles really show up, and this was really interesting. I haven't seen this happen where the paint was underneath the plastic. It kind of left this rough texture, which was really kind of neat. So then do the same thing with the bubble wrap, and you can even see some of the wrinkles in the plastic of the bubble wraps. The The bubble wrap had a little bit of turquoise paint on it, so there's a little bit of turquoise in there. So if I wanted to kind of finish this page up, I could just easily take a little bit of that same purple color and paint it on and leave it dry. And another journal page started.